The Morning Show, Killers of the Flower Moon, The Changeling, The SAG Strike, and a whole lot more. This is TV+Talk on MacVoices.
Hello, welcome back to another episode of TV+Talk. We're very excited to be here. We've got kind of through August, September, back to school, but luckily there's a lot of TV on Apple TV Plus to look forward to, and I'm obviously here discussing it with my pal, Chuck Joyner. Hello, Chuck.
Charlotte, great to see you as always. And yeah, I'm looking forward to this, especially since with the strike going on in Hollywood, it feels like we aren't getting a lot of new stuff. And now all of a sudden Apple TV Plus is going to change that.
I think we'll probably have to touch on that as our conversation goes on. There's one particular thing I want to talk about that with you. Before we get into the stuff coming out in September, should note that Invasion, the latest season of that, season 2, is out. We have at least 2, maybe probably 3 episodes by the time you watch this out. That's one of the big sci-fi shows going on Apple TV Plus, which seems to be doing quite well. People seem to quite like Apple TV Plus sci-fi, don't they?
It seems to be that's where a number of the hits have come from, Charlotte. Yeah, so it's interesting they're carving out that little niche.
Yeah, they seem to be doing quite well on it. Okay, let's head into September because there's a lot for us to get through and unpack and maybe even look forward to. The first thing I noticed, which is coming out on September 8th, so it might already be out by the time you're watching this, is something called The Changeling. Now, it passed me by when I was looking at all the endless shows to prepare for. There's other stuff that I've found, but this looks quite compelling, I have to say. This is how the Apple TV Plus kind of PR machine describes The Changeling. It calls it a fairy tale for grown-ups, a horror story, a parenthood fable, and a perilous odyssey through a New York City you didn't know existed. Now, a couple of things. First of all, I do quite like kind of dark fairy tale stuff. Second, I like almost anything set in New York. So, first off, these 2 things are working for me. Are you a horror fan, Chuck?
I'm a horror fan from the standpoint of horror, not gore. Yes. Happily, because this is on Apple TV Plus, I have high hopes because I don't think they will fall into the gore category. But the fact that they're couching it as a fairy tale and a horror story is really intriguing to me. So, and I'm with you. I missed this completely. So I'm looking forward to seeing just what happens in the first 2 or 3 episodes and determining whether it's something I will enjoy.
Yeah, so the cast includes Lakeith Stanfield, Adina Porter, Clark Bacco, and Samuel T. Herring. The showrunner on this is Kelly Marcel. So I think it's going to be quite interesting. Now, I think what you were slightly getting at with your comment about the gore, by the way, I completely agree with you. Horror that's kind of dark and a bit psycho and a bit slightly, don't want to say twisted because I don't want to give our listeners and viewers the wrong impression of me. But I'm like you, and sort of chopped up body parts on shows don't really do much for me. I like something a bit subtler and clever. Can I put it like that? Now, I think what you were getting at is it's been a bit of an ongoing reputational thing with Apple TV Plus, hasn't it? That it's kind of, should we call it family friendly? I don't know. And that was certainly the reputation, if you remember, kind of 4 years ago when the service first came online. There was the famous example, I'm sure we've talked about it on the show before, of the supposed memo from Tim Cook. I'm pretty sure it was in reference when he was watching the morning show being shot. I might be misremembering, but anyway, there was an instance where he apparently passed a memo to a member of the crew, presumably someone quite senior, and the note said, I think, do they have to swear so much? Then we saw the first episode ever, if you remember, from 2019 of the morning show. Clearly that memo had not been registered. And I think since then we haven't really had Apple slip into what it could have been given the brand and company it's associated with. TV Plus has not slipped into that middle of the road, bland, if you want to call it family friendly, you can, kind of shows and movies, has it? It has managed to avoid that.
It has, and I think that's a positive thing. We already have that. It's called broadcast TV. And it unfortunately, as I mean, there are still, believe it or not, there's some decent shows, or have been, on broadcast TV, but they never feel quite realistic. And whether it's a positive commentary or not on our society, this kind of regular use of profanity is part of the real world right now as we see it. And so when you go to something like broadcast TV and it's completely eliminated, it just feels like, yeah, this is unrealistic. No matter how mature the subject matter is, it just doesn't feel like it's real.
Yeah, and for me, it's not only about kind of swearing. Some of the stuff on Apple TV Plus is quite dark, isn't it? If you actually think about it, think of that first season of Truth Be Told, the storyline with the twins and whatever. I won't do spoilers for anyone who hasn't seen it, but it's worth watching. But also a rumor, it's really dark. They don't hold back in Slow Horses, which, by the way, used August to finish it, season 1. So good, having to restrain myself from diving into season 2. Again, plenty of swearing and violence, but not gratuitous. So I think they have managed to avoid being bland without that sense that it's kind of a bit over the top. And I'll be really interested to see where the Changeling fits into that, because obviously this show is unapologetically dark. I've looked at some of the press images for it. It looks pretty dark. And I guess there'll be some kind of quite twisted-y elements to it. So I'm quite intrigued to watch this and how the people involved pull it off.
And I'm afraid I'm showing a little bit of bias because I expect more from a show on Apple TV than just gore. And not casting any aspersions on anybody's favorite shows, but after a while, the whole zombie thing is just like, it's so overdone.
You're anti-zombie, are you?
Well, not anti-zombie, but it's just like, okay, it's the boogeyman that everybody summons up, and we have a new show and it's going to be about zombies, and it's like, whatever happened to the good old vampires? But
okay. Let me just establish this: you're anti-zombie, pro-vampire.
Well, in everything in moderation, Charlotte. Everything in moderation. Okay. So that's it. But to your point, I don't need more body parts unless it's going to really add to the story for some reason, like a murder mystery where the detective comes across that's fine, that works. But just to have it, you use the word gratuitous, and that's a perfect word, and it's not something that I think Apple TV will deliver. Well,
the title, The Changeling, definitely I would say implies something a bit more subtle than, as you say, kind of another zombie apocalypse. We might have to come back in a few weeks and be like, oh, we got that wrong. But I'm quite interested to watch this, I think. But maybe I won't watch it after dark. It might have to be a daytime show.
Are you one of those that it can affect you that much?
Well, I don't know. Let's see. We'll have to check it out and see. I'll text you if I'm feeling a bit disturbed by it, because I'll send you some warnings. Well, we mentioned the morning show, and it's back. September 13th, season 3 is out, and there has been a rather eye-catching trailer, which I've watched, and you've watched it as well, for season 3. Now, in the first kind of teaser, we got a little hint of what was to come, and I was hopeful that it would be better than season 2, which I really didn't like. You thought was better than season 1, but you're wrong. Season 3 looks like it might actually go back to what season 1 was, which was focusing on the company and the personalities instead of trying to weave COVID into it, which I just thought was a mess. Anyway, go back and watch or listen to last month's show to see what we were talking about and have our discussion there. So season 3, anything I say, by the way, is not a spoiler. It's in the trailer. So we see that Reese Witherspoon's character has her night in it, has an evening show now. Looks like a primetime hit, pretty big. Rachel from Jennifer Aniston's character, you spot the millennial. Jennifer Aniston's character looks like she's back on breakfast TV. There's all sorts of power battles going on. And we also have Jon Hamm. Now, from the trailer, he looks to me like he's meant to be a kind of Elon Musk billionaire kind of character. And one notable thing we learned from the trailer is there is a cyber attack on UBA. And it looks like the threat, or the actuality, we don't know that, is that all sorts of private things are revealed about those involved in the network. What did you think when you saw the trailer? Were you kind of excited for it like I am now?
I was, Charlotte. I watched the trailer for season 3. Then I went back and watched the trailer for season 2. And then came back to the trailer for season 3. And I feel like this, a couple things. First of all, it feels like you're going to get a lot more of a different kind of personal drama.
Yes.
But also the fact that season 2 sort of tried to weave COVID in. You and I know, I mean, we've already established that I was wrong about this, but I'll say it anyway. They were trying to make it a little more relatable. And I feel like right now, the cyber thing is also another thing that's a very real part of our world.
Sure.
And so, I love the way they're trying to play off some of that instead of just digging into the typical stereotypical drama of who's sleeping with who's leaving who's cheating on who. This
who's stabbing who in the back.
Exactly. This feels like it has a whole lot of potential. And I said this before on the show. I watched the first season because it was one of Apple's 10 poll shows for
it was the first thing, wasn't it?
New network. Yeah, and I enjoyed it to a surprising degree. And now I'm really, really looking forward to this season.
Yeah, I really am. I think, look, there is definitely going to be some who's sleeping with who, some bitching, some gossiping, and some backstabbing in this. We can tell that again from the trailers that we've seen. But yes, it is good that they're tackling this kind of highly relevant, as you quite rightly say, topic. One thing I hope they really avoid, having watched Succession and the kind of Elon Musk-esque character in that, I hope we don't get the same kind of thing. I hope they do something different. You've got a brilliant actor in Jon Hamm on the cast. I hope it's a bit cleverer than that. I kind of think it will be, but it's going to be very interesting. I am excited about it. We'll obviously discuss it when we've been able to see a few episodes next month. As I say, it's September the 13th. That's coming out. I will. Some of the first, that trailer does look very dramatic. I don't know. We'll see. I wonder if they're going to keep. Obviously, they're dealing with a topic that's timely and relevant, but I wonder if they're going to keep with modern day issues in the way they felt they needed to with COVID, if you see what I mean. Yeah, and I mean, this could become a trend for future seasons or farther into this season. But I love the fact that they're just starting off with something that is very relatable and not just based on the stereotypes. That feels like it sets in. And you know what? I mean, if you're right about Jon Hamm being an Elon Musk style character. Do you see what I mean from the trailer? Yeah. I mean, but that could also be very in sync with some of what we see in today's headlines. So. Well, they have done it with both seasons so far, haven't they? Season 1 obviously focused on the kind of Me Too thing quite significantly. Season 2, as we've discussed, kind of finished that off and it got overtaken by COVID. We'll have to see. I think, did I mispronounce Reese Witherspoon's character or misname it? Her character is Bradley Jackson. As I say, she now looks like she's got the primetime evening slot in the later season, which is interesting. And from what you look through the Apple TV+ PR materials, it looks like we're going to get 10 episodes. We might get up to 10 episodes, something like that. We got 10 episodes of season 2, so we'll see what we get with season 3. Normally about that. That's a kind of classic Apple season length, isn't it? And I'm looking forward to every single one. There's so much it feels like they could do with this to continue the evolution of the characters and the story. Yeah, because they've kept a lot of the previous characters as well. We've got the Juliana Margulies character. We don't know what her relationship with Reese Witherspoon will be this time around. So we've got Jon Hamm. There's a lot. Obviously, Billy Crudup, who's a brilliant actor, has been brilliant throughout, is still in it. So they keep each season. They keep some of the stuff that's gone on, don't they? And it's not, it's not like I mentioned Truth Be Told before, where it's a distinct storyline in every season. They're going to keep some of the stuff going with this, but they have introduced quite significant new characters every season as well. I think that's been quite effective, actually.
I agree. I mean, this is some of Apple TV Plus's best work, and as far as a mature, intelligent series that hooks you and won't let you go. Yes. Well, maybe it'll be Jon Hamm to the rescue. Jon Hamm will redeem all my complaints about season 2. We'll see. I mean, Jon Hamm and you've got Tig Notaro is coming into this as well. They've kept, obviously, Nesta Carbonell, Karen Pittman, who's utterly brilliant in it. And I think she plays an even bigger role in season 3. As I say, the Juliana Margulies character is still there as well. So there's a lot for them to play with. So we will see, and no doubt we will discuss it. Hopefully we'll agree on this one. Hopefully we'll both enjoy season 3. I'm kind of hoping for Jon Hamm as a vampire. You want Jon Hamm as a... Right. I'm noticing a theme. Just a thought. Listen, if anyone could pull off being a vampire to your satisfaction, I'm sure it is Jon Hamm. We've got, actually, as well, we'll move on from the kind of sex, drugs, rock and roll world of TV. We've got a couple of maybe comedic-y, family-focused kind of shows coming as well. There's one called Still Up, which is, actually, we were talking about being scared at night. Well, this show is based on some friends who bond over their insomnia. They connect to each other late into the night, apparently, and they're kind of, you can imagine the kind of turn such a relationship will take. So we've got that coming up as well. That is out on September 22nd. And then a show I kind of was interested in and watched the trailer for. I don't know if you've had a chance to see it. Is a show called Flora and Son. That comes out a week later. It's rated R, and that's September 29th. That's coming out. And now the premise of this show is that it's set in, I think, Northern Ireland. I don't know if it's Republic or Northern Ireland. I think Republic now. And basically there's a naughty kid, the son, and Flora, the mother, is trying to sort him out, and she tries to do it through music, passing him a guitar. You can imagine what a scrappy young boy, how he reacts to this. Thankfully, you'll be relieved to know this, Joseph Gordon-Levitt is there, and to the rescue to provide musical lessons, it seems like, for the mother, played by Eve Hewson. Now, I watched the trailer for this and I was a bit like, oh, it's a bit soppy, it's a bit daft and unrealistic, but might be kind of sweet. I feel like this is not going to be your vibe, Chuck. From watching the trailer, yeah, it did not capture me. I mean, it's one of those things that, if we need to discuss it, I'll probably watch an episode and see what happens. But yeah, it's not the kind of thing that I would say, oh, I can't wait for this one.
No, when I was going through it and thinking about it, it didn't particularly strike me as your vibe. But it could be... Here's what I tend to think about these shows, and I think it is a particular Apple TV Plus thing now. These kind of shows, the kind of comedy with a sort of sad moving element to it, let's put it that way. Basically all the comedies that are on TV Plus that aren't Mythic Quest, I think just get compared to Ted Lasso, one way or the other. Even if, something like this is very different people involved to Ted Lasso. But I can just see it slipping into that kind of comparison.
Isn't that the way, though, it always is? If you have something that is super successful, then suddenly everything gets compared to it. And it's really not fair because we've had this discussion too. And so these are not spoilers either. But I felt like as Ted Lasso went along, it grew up. and it became just a little less silly, and that appealed to me. I'm not sure it necessarily appealed to you. And so, and how many times can you follow that path before it gets boring? I felt like Mythic Quest did a little bit, but not the same range, not to the same degree. It continued to have its level of silliness, and it worked
brilliantly. It's utterly brilliant, yes. And when it did serious, it kept the silly end, did it really well, and it wasn't trite in the way sometimes Ted Lasso got. Anyway, I think that we did discuss that I came around to the end of Ted Lasso, didn't I? But for anyone who listened or watched last month's show, I promised I was going to send Chuck a load of links and videos that I think relate, like real life football events that I thought related to the end of Ted Lasso. Our Slack chat was full of them. I will restrain myself from spoilers because I guess we'd still get in trouble. But we'll discuss off air if you see what I meant.
Yeah, well, and Charlotte gave me a bit of a masterclass in soccer or English football or however you want to refer to it. So I appreciate it because it let me see Ted Lasso in a new light.
Yeah, so that's September 29th for Flora and Sun. I will be intrigued how some of these shows do actually. Let's touch on your point about the strikes, because obviously the strikes are not affecting shows or movies that have already been made. And you described this on a previous show, but we need to come back to it because it's becoming more and more relevant, how the strikes are affecting promotion of shows and movies. To me, the most significant thing on Apple TV Plus that this could affect is Killers of the Flower Moon. Now, we've learned just kind of a day before we recorded this show, the same week this show comes out, that the film is going to come out widely, much more widely than we thought, on October the 20th. It's a big global release and it's going in IMAX. That's much bigger than we thought. And then after that, once that run, which I guess will last 4 to 6 weeks, something like that, it will go onto TV Plus as we knew it would. Now, this is a massive movie for Apple TV Plus. It's a big deal for Paramount Pictures, who it's a collaboration with. We don't know that anyone, these are huge stars in it, right? You've got Leonardo DiCaprio, you've got Robert De Niro, you've got Lily Gladstone, it's directed by Martin Scorsese. This is a big, big deal for everyone involved. And they might not be able to promote it, depending on the state of the strike, the conditions imposed on SAG members, so on and so forth. That's a really big deal, isn't it?
I think it's a huge deal. It's a huge deal. And I've had the occasion to have some of this explained to me. Well, I don't mind saying, I went to the Star Trek convention in Las Vegas, and some of the stars there are very much active in the strike negotiations and at the higher levels of SAG. And it was very educational for them to explain why they're fighting some of these things and why it's such a big deal. It gave me a different perspective on it. And so I feel like at least my thinking is now much more balanced about, because before it's like another strike. I mean, again, because we all tend to, it's inconveniencing us, right? And it's really not about us. It's about their ability.
If you don't mind, sorry to interrupt, but also I think it's easy for people like you and I to just be like, oh, the big stars are on strike. Isn't that annoying? Like, what do they need to strike for? They've got plenty of money. And we see images of big, big stars on the picket lines, whatever. But actually, that's not what it's about. And I'm sure the people you spoke to were talking about the sort of much lower levels of acting and people trying to break through and the effects, what they're trying to fight for in the strikes for those kind of people.
And with our mutual interest in Apple, we're also technologists. And one of the big issues is using the likenesses, using the sounds.
Huge issue.
This is something that up until very, very recently was just not a concern. That along with, I personally did not understand how streaming has affected the rights based on past contracts versus now. And so, there are a lot of moving parts here, and there are a lot of new moving parts. And I'm not sure that either side is really doing a great job of educating folks in that fashion, because in some way it may be perceived as promotion. And of course, that's something that SAG is trying to avoid. And I even had it was even
not avoid. Let's be blunt about it. There are very strict bans and rules around actors doing promotion for stuff they've already made at the moment.
Right. And again, that was one of the things that was explained, because to me it didn't make any sense. If I've done work, yes, I want to promote it for my own benefit. Well, that ends up benefiting the studios too. And so there are a lot of subtleties here that if you take the time, A, it's very interesting, and B, you get a better understanding of what's going on. But in a world full of so many things that are demanding your attention, it's easy to overlook these. And I think we would all be better served if we would go and spend just a little time and get educated about some of these things.
Yes, it is a really interesting set of negotiations. No one's coming out of it particularly well, I have to say. And I think this might be the first time where Apple really gets in the firing line of it, because they obviously want to make a big fuss about a movie they spent huge amounts of time and money on. As I mentioned, the three big stars, but there's also, huge stars in this: Jesse Plemons, Carrie Jane Myers, Janae Collins, Gillian Dion, and Tantu Cardinal are all in it, as well as the people I mentioned before. That is a hell of a cast to deploy for promo. And it's possible that they'll be denied the opportunity to do that. And I think that it'll be a really interesting moment, because, as I say, Apple needs to make this film a success.
But also, if we flip it around and go back to what we were talking about with the Changeling, will the story, will the movie stand on its own without the promotion? Will there be enough word of mouth, which kind of goes back to the way that a lot of marketing for movies used to be done? Will there be enough interest in this particular story, along with the star power? But without the star power's promotion, how will it fare?
Look, you can put the names Leonardo DiCaprio, Robert De Niro, Lily Gladstone, Martin Scorsese on a poster, and people are going to turn up at the cinema, right?
Definitely.
That's just a fact. But I think what you might lose is the ability to explain the subtleties of this story, the importance of this story. It's about a very difficult topic. It's about the brutal murder of people in the Osage Nation in 1920s Oklahoma. It probably needs some explaining to people. And yeah, I'll be interested, as I say, to see. So that's October 20th. It's a very big deal for Apple, and they're really pushing it as widely as they can, which was interesting, because we thought it was going to be a slightly more limited cinema release, but they're going pretty big on it from October 20th. Just before that, a week before that, a month before that, September the 12th, we have what we're all assuming is the iPhone 15 event. Now, obviously, we don't talk about Apple hardware on the show. We talk about Apple content. But I think there is a crossover. Not least because if you buy a new Apple product, you often get Apple services for free, right? A free trial, extended free trial or whatever. And also, something big like the iPhone 15 release. And I think it's going to be one of the biggest iPhone releases for quite a number of years. I think this is going to be a really big deal, the iPhone 15. From everything we've read, based on the kind of rather incremental improvements of recent releases, I think 15 might be a very big deal. That's a great way to get more people into the Apple ecosystem, i.e. services.
Charlotte, yeah, this is something that has come up on a number of the shows that I do. The idea that Apple is I don't know if you consider it a transition from a tech company to a services company, or just a broadening out. But services are becoming
a bit of both, and that's why I started covering TV+, as you know.
Yeah, exactly. And services are becoming a much bigger deal. And
look at the Apple results figures if you want to know what a big deal services now is.
And your point is so well taken, because it's one more introduction to that little logo with a bite taken out of it, and it makes you think, well, if I like this, I might like that. And we've seen that effect. There's always been a bit of a joke about the halo effect, And that applies to how many different Apple devices. If you got an iPad or an iPhone, pardon me, let me go back. If you had a Mac, maybe you would like, some of the iDevices. If you like the iPad, or darn, I did it again, the iPod, maybe you want to go to the iPhone. If you like the iPhone, well, maybe you like the iPad. It builds and builds and builds, and pretty soon you have all these Apple devices sitting around you, and you really didn't even think about it. Because
not us, Chuck. We're very restrained.
Speak for yourself.
I'll find the iPad to wave around somewhere.
Yeah. So, I think it's one more success story that Apple has out there. And you're right. It has the potential to bring more folks into the ecosystem.
I mean, again, look, this is anecdotal, but I know people that wait till it's their time for an upgrade or whatever, till they need a new laptop or a new Apple, qualifying Apple device. And then they wait, they trigger the free trial, and they binge watch a bunch of shows on TV+. It has previously been Ted Lasso, but there'll be other stuff. We've just talked about season 3 of The Morning Show, whatever. There'll be people that use that as an opportunity to test out TV+, and maybe then end up paying for it, which of course is exactly what Apple wants.
Sure. And that's I guess that's just part of the game, but they're delivering one of the devices that you have the potential to consume this on. Of course, you can do it on your Apple TV or your big screen TV, but you can also do it very nicely on some of these gorgeous iPhone screens. So
we can expect an upgrade on the displays, can't we? And maybe we'll see things like improved AirPlay, where you can send it from your phone to a TV. There's all sorts of... For me, the iPhone is no longer just about the hardware. And it hasn't been for a long time, in truth.
No, you're right. And how many times have we talked about how your phone now is your lifeline to pretty much everything? Terrifying, but also, this is the future we all wanted. We didn't expect it to be in a phone. But I still think that's one of the brilliant things that Apple called it the iPhone, because phone was something you could relate to. If you had called this the iDevice, iHub, or whatever, it's like, well, what does that mean? But a phone, I can relate to a phone because back then I already had a phone. Now I've got a phone that does a whole lot more, and pretty soon the whole lot more completely overtook the phone function.
Yes. Well, as well as the actual hardware, because I'll be honest with you, Chuck, I'm in the market for a new iPhone, an upgrade. I'm on the 12 Pro, so I think I'm in the market I can be far too easily tempted to upgrade. But aside from what the hardware capabilities are in this new iPhone, I'll be very interested in a couple of things. One, will TV+, with all the stuff that we've just discussed coming out, will that play any part in the keynote? Sometimes has in other keynotes. And what will the trial period for TV+ be? We've seen it shortened, haven't we? Over time, it was basically a year for free first. Then has it gone from 3 months to 1 month? So I'll be interested in keeping an eye on all that kind of stuff as well. And I have no doubt that you and your crew will be discussing it on MacVoices Live. So make sure you're with Chuck for that. Where else can people keep up with you?
MacVoices.com is where you can see everything. If you can do MacVoices Live, depending on where you are in the world, we do it at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific on YouTube at youtube.com/MacVoicesTV. But if you can't be there because you prefer to sleep, and we all like to sleep, the shows do end up lightly edited and broken up into more manageable segments later. But the fun stuff is really the live show, where the folks can come and chat in our live chat and throw questions, comments at us, and we react like a bunch of trained seals.
I'm at Charlotte A. Henry across social media, or at Charlotte A. Henry, and head over to theedition.net for blog posts, things like that. And please do sign up at newsletter.theedition.net for newsletters and podcasts and things like that. All means a lot. I cover tech and media space, particularly streaming, over there. Well, that's it for another month. There's been Charlotte, a lot to go through.
Charlotte, by the way, that is the award-winning The Edition newsletter.
Well, I'm not going to pretend to be humble. Yes, I did win an award. I'm very chuffed about it. So thank you for exposing my complete vanity. But we'll head back next month, and it looks like there's going to be even more to talk about. So we'll see you next time on TV+Talk.
Thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices, or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.